has to be sleep. Only because if you think like what has an effect on the other pieces, like sleep, if you took those three, you said there's three key components. It's almost like if you were a molecule, sleep is the middle, it's the nucleus. Because if your sleep's terrible, well, that's going to have an effect on other things. And we spend a third of our lives, essentially sleeping, and so optimizing for that's something that we can control. Like I made a big effort in terms of like trying to optimize my sleeping environment, just because that is something you can probably see the biggest gains for it, and you don't have to spend any money. For the most part, it's like these are mostly like behavioral things, understanding, through some data yourself. But yeah, I think a lot of people, they spend all this money on supplements and all those other things, and they have such a crappy sleep hygiene,
Yeah.
and that's messing them up big time.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned. I agree with you that sleep is that key component. I've learned that a lot in the last few weeks. I just got a new puppy, and we're going hard into puppy training and potty training, and she's waking me up every few hours throughout the night. And I didn't realize how good of sleep I was getting before I got the dog, and how little sleep I'm getting now. And I noticed a huge change in my performance, my cognitive performance, even nutrition. I'm noticing I'm slipping up on, like, I guess you call it willpower, or just, the ability to say no to certain foods. Now that I'm like not getting as much sleep or good sleep, I might cave and have that donut, or, I've been doing time restricted eating, and usually my eating window starts around noon or 1 p.m. And now that my sleep is all thrown off, I find myself wanting to eat at like 10 a.m. or 9:30, and I'm just like, what? I haven't done this in like a year. So it just goes to show how crucial good sleep is. And you mentioned, that was kind of a big piece for you, is to start optimizing sleep. What are some things that you have done to optimize your sleep?
Sure. So in my bedroom, you want it to be cold and dark. So I put blackout curtains, because I live in New York City. I'm not in New York City right now, but there's extraneous light from outside overnight. You just don't want any of that in the bedroom. So make sure that, even if you have electronics in the room, you want to, flashing clocks and all that. You want to make sure like you get rid of as much of that as possible. Temperature wise, and I've proven this from my data, is like the cooler the room is, the ambient temperature, I sleep much better. So going cold. I've done things in the wintertime where I've like literally just kept the heat off in my bedroom, just let it drop way down, and I had some pretty great sleep. I mean, you're still under the covers, so you're not like freezing, but it's that ambient temperature. Um, I've experimented with a big win for me was mouth taping. So but you get this inexpensive 3M micropore tape, and it's feel peaceful in your mouth. And if you look at your sleep data, you might see like, oh, why I don't remember waking up 25 times overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Little blips, just little blips on the sleep graph. But you realize like, well, you were sleeping with like this with your mouth open, and you basically were like gasping, kept waking up because you had to take. It's almost like an apnea, but not as extreme.
Yeah.
Um, and mouth taping just forces you to nasal breathe. And everyone's like, oh, I got problems, I'm going to suffocate. Like you put the tape on. If you're really worried about it, you can put it on loose enough that if you really have to take a breath,
Mm-hmm.
the tape will come off. But
Yep.
over time, it's just more of a reminder to you to keep your lips together. So you put it on lighter and lighter.
Yep.
And for me, that was a huge impact, in terms of overall sleep quality and efficiency, fewer disturbances. Yeah.
What is it about nasal breathing that's important? Like, why is it bad to mouth breathe?
Well, first off, when your mouth nasal breathing is doing a bunch of things, right? It's cleaning the air, is being filtered as it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
You produce nitric oxide. It's just a much better, like we're made to be nasal breathers even day to day. I mean, we use our mouths to talk or to eat, et cetera. But you're not supposed to be walking around as a mouth breather. Um, you're, if you sleep with your mouth open, everything's going to dry out. People have issues with that. It's just not, overall for overall just sort of well-being. I think you don't want to be walking through life like you can't even. I mean, there's a bunch of books that recently come out that talk all about breath work and breathing, and they've actually showed some of the scientific backing of the importance of nasal breathing versus people who walk around mouth breathing. Often, a lot of it comes down to like when we walk around day to day, and you see someone like they sprinted and they're gasping for breath, and they're like, I mean, that's not gasping for. That doesn't mean they need oxygen. What that's doing is you're blowing off. You built up carbon dioxide, and people don't have a tolerance for CO2 buildup. And we're seeing this a lot now, where people say that they're wearing masks and they're like, I can't breathe. It's because the CO2 is building up, and they think they can't breathe, but it's actually you're freaking out a little bit because the CO2 is building up, and that's why a lot of the breath work and practices you see out there are about getting people to build up that CO2 tolerance, because actually the CO2 that you have in your body actually allows you to use more oxygen. There's a
Interesting.
CO2 actually helps disassociate oxygen from hemoglobin. So, but anyway, so mouth taping definitely was a huge thing for me. I've told, I've have a lot of friends and family that have since started doing it, and they also are like, they're sold on it. Like they were skeptics at first, and they realized like, wow, from just behavior wise, for sleep, ditch all the bright light and electronics. We hear a lot about artificial light and blue light blocking glasses and all that. Basically, you want to have an hour before bed. You want to really have a kind of a wind down routine. Because I think for two reasons. One is just, all that light stimulating, like bright light right before bed, we're not really meant for that. And so you'll see people wear those like blue blocking glasses or something that knocks everything becomes like red or orange, or have lighting in your home that kind of does that, or just read an hour before bed. But the other thing is, I think people like they just get, especially now, like we've had an election and all that, and people are on social media like nonstop. They're freaking
that mental
out.
Stimulation.
So they're going to bed completely wired, and that's going to affect your sleep. So you don't have that. You need to really have a routine. Get yourself, like an hour or so before bed. Just do that. That's another tip. And for me, like I notice meal timing is important. If I eat a late meal, that's going to definitely, your metabolism's elevated and all that. That'll be easily seen in the sleep data. But what I like to also do is shift what I'm eating. So like, I'm not going to eating a really huge animal protein meal, like a giant steak for dinner late, probably not the best thing for me. I actually find where if I shift that earlier in the day, have that for lunch, and then have like a really light dinner, for me, it has a much better effect on sleep. There's tools and modalities you can do, like there's breath work you can do before you go to bed. That'll, for a lot of people, that helps them unwind as well. Just doing even 5 minutes of it before bed. I have we talked about temperature, the air temperature, but you can also cool the actual temperature of the bed. So I have a device called a Chillipad. It pumps chilled water into it sits on top of your mattress, and it's just, it's thicker than like a couple sheet, it's I don't know, maybe like that thick, and it chills. You set the temperature, and it will chill and circulate this water, so that the actual, you're sleeping on something that can be cold. And once I started doing that, I stacked that with a cold room. That had a pretty great effect too.